Yeah. I guess we're ready. We'll go in the interest of time. So people starting, hopefully we have some more folks come on. So good morning, everyone. Everybody knows me, Yolanda Montoya Cordova, Deputy Secretary, Department of Workforce Solutions. Couple of cool announcements. Our first one is to welcome our new board chair, Josh Orozco. So Mr. Orozco was officially appointed. We're really excited about that. So thank you, Mr. Orozco, for willing to step into this role. And so we're going to hand the, as we say, the gavel over to him as we get started. I just want to say I was really impressed because he just jumped right in. We had an LFC hearing and moments notice he was there and actually did a great job of representing the board at the LFC hearing. The second announcement that I want to make, and I'm sure all of you heard this, but we're in between secretaries. And so we have a new secretary that's going to be starting with us on August the 15th. And her name is Sarita Nair. So stay tuned for that as well. So we're really excited about her coming into the fray. Mr. Cerna, who is our acting secretary, has now gone over to become the secretary of the Department of Transportation. So lots of moving pieces in there. So our next board meeting that we have, you will see Secretary Nair, and we look forward to sending out just an introduction once she's here, but we'll send out information to the board. And with that, I will turn it over to our new board chair, Board Orozco. You have the floor.
Thank you, Yolanda. And thank you for those kind words. I don't typically testify in front of the LFC. I think that was the first time ever. So I'm glad I didn't mess things up for us too much. I also wanted to say thank you. I doubt she's on the call, but to Tracy, she's been a great champion of workforce development in the state, a champion of myself, and thank her for her leadership and pushing me to get involved in this stuff. I realize I have huge shoes to fill, so hopefully I can pick up where she left off. Really quick, John, how are we on quorum?
We are still short, Mr. Chair.
Short by how many?
Still short by 3.
Okay, all right. Well, then we will proceed, but this will just be, no action will be taken. We'll just discuss items. I think everybody knows the drill. So with that, it is 10:09. I will go ahead and call this meeting of the New Mexico State Workforce Development Board to order. It is August 4th, and once again, I have 10:09 a.m. Okay, starting off, welcome, introduction of new members, and opening remarks. Who is going to announce our newest member?
Mr. Chair, I will announce Paul Espinosa. Unfortunately, he couldn't be here today. He had a prior commitment with the American Legion. But Paul Espinosa will be the new veteran rep. He is with the American Legion. We're excited to have them on board with us, knowing that the American Legion does have outreach throughout the entire state. So he will be joining us on the next meeting, but he's very excited to be joining with us. And he does have a relationship already with, I think, the Northern Board already, as far as doing some workforce development with them. So we're very excited to have him on board as a veteran representative.
Well, fantastic. Hopefully he'll be able to attend our next meeting, and we can allow him some time to introduce himself. Okay, the next item would be the approval of the agenda, but as we can't approve that, we will just move on. Although we would have had some changes to the agenda. So if we do get a quorum, we'll revisit that. The next item was the minutes. Again, we'll have to skip over that. Next up is the Swdb Administration. We won't be able to vote on any of these items, but we can certainly discuss them. The first one was to discuss some changes to the bylaws. Is that going to be Veronica or is that going to be you, John?
It would be me, sir. And just a reminder to all the board panelists, not to put any business information in the chat. All board information must be verbal through discussion. So again, please, nothing on the chat. All righty. All right, Mr. Chair, I'm going to share what the bylaws, what we're looking at with the bylaws right now.
And I will just add, it's customary at the beginning of a new fiscal year for us to go over these things in administrative side. So that's why we were bringing this in, is just so that we can refresh for the new fiscal year.
So the one thing we're going to talk about on this one right here is the quorum. Board members, we just wanted to put out, we have done some research with quorums throughout the state and come to realize the practice that we've had of having majority board members, business members present at a state board meeting was actually not in our bylaws. We actually had the bylaws written the quorum where we just had 10 members present for a board meeting. So what we would like to do in the interest of protecting the business members as far as being on the board meetings and understanding the importance of them being present. Mr. Chair, one of the things we wanted to do is change the quorum where the quorum will state that 51% of board members must be present and participating. So we currently have 28 board members. And so we would have 51% of the board members present. And then of the present members at a particular state board meeting, 51% of those present must be business members. That is the way the quorum is, we would like the quorum to read on the bylaws. That is the recommendation we'll put out whenever we do have quorum, according to the old bylaws, then we can vote on that. But this is the proposed new quorum for the state board once we're able to vote on it.
Thank you, John. Since this is discussion, are there any questions or comments, concerns regarding this?
DJ Heckes has a question or a
Yes,
comment.
DJ.
So not saying I oppose it. Do you think it has a good representation of the business community for anything we vote on though? Because the business community has been hit so hard since COVID in like 70% of the industries. 30% profited during COVID, 70% got hit pretty hard. That's the only question I have.
Thank you, DJ. John or Yolanda?
So to respond to that, what we're thinking, DJ, is that, so if we have, let's say we have 26 members present, and if that's the full board, and if everybody was present, it would still be a majority business. The businesses would be in the majority on that. So like, for example, for today, we're short 3 members. I don't know how many business members we have represented today. We would be short in terms of having 50. So of the, let's say, John, how many do we have right now? We have, I have my gallery up, so it's kind of weird. If we had 10 members present today, we would want to say that 6 of those members should be business members. We'd still have a quorum of 10, but 6 of them should be business members. If we had 13, we would still want 7 of those or 8 of those to be business members. So it's like trying to keep business at the center of it, that their voice is the majority voice in a quorum that we call on that day. Does that make sense? Okay. I think Kelly had her hand up next.
Yes, Kelly.
Thank you. And I'll not ask my second question because I do see the parliamentary authority on page 9, so that's good. But where would I send technical or grammatical changes to the bylaws? Who would I send that to? To you, John?
Yes. You're on mute, John. Yes, John would be, he's the administrator for the board. So any kind of grammatical changes or technical changes to the language that you'd want to propose would go to John.
You know, I think it's good then that we're discussing this and not voting on this today. If there are some technical changes, that gives us an opportunity to cover that. Amber, you have a question or comment?
Yes, I think it's a good idea to keep business at the center of the board, so I would agree with that. I think this is a smart move. However, I just wanted to raise that I think in the short time that I've been on the board, we've struggled to get quorum, I think several times. I don't have a running list of how many times, but it seems to me, if I'm understanding this correctly, this would make it even more challenging to get quorum at meetings. And I think that maybe if we are going to change the laws and we want to make sure we get business done, that we have some other things that we're doing as well to kind of make sure we get people to the meetings as much as possible, you know, because otherwise we're going to be further hampered, I think, in getting work done. I just wanted to register that.
Thank you. And that was my initial concern as well. John, did you want to respond to Amber?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Director Rodriguez. In the past year, going date to date, if I can go back to there has been one time we have not had quorum. So we've had very good success with having quorum, especially since we've gone to the virtual. I'm going to look back. Oh, I take that back. The first two, the last one and the first one of this year, we did not meet quorum. And if I was to go back to last year, we actually had quorum on every meeting last year, using the model of business members majority.
Yeah, using the previous model.
Mhm.
Okay, yeah, I guess I'm thinking about those two previous ones since I've been here, but what was I going to say? Just, it seems like maybe we've had to like call some people or, you know, email people quickly. So just something to consider.
And you're absolutely correct, Amber. When we would start some meetings, sometimes we wouldn't have quorum immediately, but we'd have members that would come in late and they would come in and we were able to make quorum. So I will say in all of my years that I've been here, that since we went to a virtual option for the State Workforce Board, we've actually had much more success on meeting quorum. Plus, I will add, I think having really engaged conversations where the board felt like there was a project that we were working towards. I think the transformation discussion and the discussion around, you know, just the system itself really created a lot of engagement, and we had good participation. So I think part of what we need to think about moving forward too, as we're setting our agendas, is what we want to bring before the board, or what the board really would like to work on, so that we can make sure we maintain that consistency.
Dale, you have a question?
Thanks, Josh. You know, part of the responsibility of being on a board is attending the meetings. And I think that, and again, we can't force people to come to these meetings, but if they sign up and get appointed and go through all that process, we just need to kind of put it back on people that, hey, we're scheduling these meetings way out in advance. You need to get them on your calendar. We need quorum so that we can, you know, have business. We understand that there's conflicts from time to time, but if it's a consistent pattern, I think we need to ask people to step down so we can replace them with people that can participate fully and represent the interests for which they were appointed. And it's got to be very frustrating for staff. And I know it was frustrating for Tracy from time to time. But, you know, if we're not going to have quorum and we know it, then maybe there's no reason to have a meeting. We reschedule it. So I just throw that out there as kind of a little frustration, because you guys do important work, and we've got important things to do, and it doesn't look good for us if we can't do our business.
Exactly. And I will tell you that part of the work of this new fiscal year, we did request some new replacements. So we're hoping that we'll get some appointments on some other positions.
You got muted, Yolanda.
I got muted. We will have some replacements on, we did request some additional appointments following our own bylaws in terms of someone's not been participating. John does a really good job of doing the outreach because he does contact individuals to find out, you know, are you still able? What is happening? And then if not, the process of getting a new member is not easy. So I will add to that. It does take some time, but I think we're gonna, we do have some new membership that's gonna be coming on.
Kelly, you have another comment?
Chairman John, Yolanda, is the use of technology in the forum, is this an entirely new section to the bylaws?
It was a section that we added as a result of the pandemic, because we had to state it. Originally in our bylaws, it wasn't there. So we added that in, and I think fortunately, a lot of entities are maintaining it, where the use of technology seems to be something that has really also improved attendance. It certainly has improved for us. I think it's easier for everyone to not have to come and travel to Albuquerque to make a meeting or to be offsite because it's time away from your businesses, especially for our business owners and employers. So we really would like to keep it. I think to keep it as an option because I think it's a lesson that we've learned, and potentially having a meeting in person from time to time. John.
Yeah, wholeheartedly understand. I'm just wondering if we need to make any change to the mention of attendance, the 15% of scheduled meetings being the requirement.
So, Mr. Chair, I would like to let everyone know that the bylaws does state and mention attendance. The bylaws does state that board members must attend at least 50% of the meetings. If that doesn't occur, then we go ahead and start moving with the process as far as looking for new membership at that point. So we have done that in the past, at least since I've taken over. We've done that because I understand the importance of having members show up to the board, to the meetings and the business that we have to attend to. So that is something I watch, and I go on calendar years based on their last one. So if they don't meet the criteria of the bylaws, then I start the process of maybe looking at some additional board members. As Ms. Yolanda alluded to, we are kind of taking a different approach to vacancies, just to let everyone know right now. So historically, we have asked existing board members to provide us recommendations. A path we're taking right now as we are convening with commissioners and trying really hard to get them engaged in the process, we are now reaching out to commissioners to look out for potential board members in their counties, in their communities, and also looking for business members who are not represented according to the governor's priorities. So we're kind of looking at a few things. So if there's not a business that's represented according to the priorities of the governors, we will reach out to the commissioner and say, you've got someone in this industry, please send us a recommendation. We did have a couple of recommendations that I need to continue to follow up on, but that is the process we're going to have moving forward to kind of replace the board members that are vacant.
Thank you, John. Any other questions or comments regarding the bylaws?
Just a comment about the vacancy. I had mentioned Annapurna's. Yashoda Naidu is interested as a business owner, and she has over, I don't know, a lot of employees. She has 4 restaurants.
Yes, TJ, I do want to thank you for the recommendation. You know, one of the things in addition to industry diversity, we're also looking at geographic diversity as well. Right? So we're kind of taking those things into consideration. We do want to get people from all over the state as far as representation on the board, but that is someone I will be looking into as well. Thank you, ma'am.
Anybody else? Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing any. So I do have 2 comments myself. The first one echoes what Amber and Dale brought up. You know, we're talking about increasing the requirements of quorum, and yet here we are today, unable to make quorum. So it's kind of, are we doing the right thing? That was my initial reaction. And when I got to thinking about it, if our quorum requirement is 10 board members, are we really doing, are we, when a board makes a decision, are we really representing the state in that? And so I felt we probably should tighten it up. And because of doing that, that means we need to do a much better job of getting participation. So that's incumbent on staff and myself as well. But I think Dale hit it on the head too. I mean, part of it is, this is something that we've all agreed to do. And we need to make a best effort to be here. Not only is it respectful to the state and our mission at the board, but it's also respectful to the other board members to be here. For instance, we're not getting any business done, yet all of us are taking this time out of our days. So going forward, we're going to put some work in to get more participation, more engagement. And then one of those strategies too is increasing the number of business members, which I think will make it easier for us, hopefully, to achieve quorum. So my other comment was on the definition, oh, you took it away, of the quorum. The way I read it and the way I understood this in our discussions, and if I'm wrong, please let me know. 51% of all state board members participating. To me, that sounds like if we have, I don't know, 15, let's make it even. 15 business members, then for a meeting to have quorum, we would need at least 8 of those business members in attendance. And then on top of that, enough other members so that we have 51% of our entire board. That's my understanding, not so much that those present, 51% need to be business members. So I think that's a distinction there. And the way I read it, how many business members do we have now, John?
We have 13 currently, but 15 sit on the board.
Okay, so 13 currently. So then for quorum, if this were to be approved, 7 business members would need to be present. And then on top of that, if we have 28 members, enough additional members that we get to 15 overall. That's the way I understand it. Am I correct? I'm asking just for my clarification.
And I guess we probably do need to clarify that, because I was thinking about it just a little bit different, Chair. So if we have a total of, I'm going to do round numbers because it's easier for me in math, but if we had a total of 20 members on the state board, 51% of all state board members are participating, that would be 10. I mean, it would be 11. But of that 11, we would want to make sure that business was in the majority. And so that's where the number comes in. So half of the board is at least participating for a quorum, but of that half, at least 51% of those are business, because this is a business-led initiative.
Gotcha. So I think, yeah, we were thinking about it 2 different ways.
Okay.
And the way this text is written in the way I was thinking of it.
Okay.
So I guess it's up to the board to decide which direction we prefer, and then we'll change the text to reflect that.
So I would need some, and I'm gonna tap Miss Kelly because she's listening to us on this. If you have some suggestions on how we could make that, because I hear what you're saying. It says 51% of the board members participating and 51% of the participating board members are business board members. I gotta figure out how we can make that clearer in terms of what we're thinking. So a quorum for us is 51% of all of the membership. And at least 51% of that is business members. So the businesses are always in the majority.
So I think I may be incorrect, and the way it's written
Okay.
is the way you think about it.
Okay,
Can I propose, and I don't know, I unfortunately am not an expert at our bylaws yet. Can we have like a bylaws committee that meets between now and our next regular board meeting? Is that something that we can do?
absolutely.
Okay, why don't we do that? And I'll, definitely participate in that. I know, Kelly mentioned some changes herself, so hopefully Kelly, you would like to participate. And anybody else, just raise your hand, or chime in. John, if you could arrange something between now, and our next board meeting. We could also send out a notice to the full board membership via email, asking if people want to participate. So that way we can get these ironed out. So when we meet again, we know exactly what we're doing.
Hey, Josh, I'd like to volunteer the business board members that are not on this call to be on that committee.
Noted. Thank you, Dale. Okay. Well, so then I think
We do have a hand raised.
yes.
Yeah. This is John Crunk in Lincoln County. One of the things I hear in this is we're looking for business owners. Is that current business owners? Or could we be looking for possibly former business owners who are retired but still engaged in their community?
Unfortunately, Commissioner Crunk, unfortunately, under the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act, they do want us to work with industries that are current. I mean, with leaders that are current, that are, that have decision-making power within that industry. And that's just a requirement from the federal government. That's where it gets a little bit dicey for us, for sure.
Thank you, Commissioner. So, John, can you put an email together? You've got some names here already, and figure that out. Thank you. And I was going to say, it sounds like it's good that we don't have quorum and we're not taking votes on these things, because it gives us some opportunity to kind of have more discussion and iron out some of the wrinkles. Okay. I'm not seeing or hearing any other comments or questions on the bylaws, so I will move on to the next item. Discuss SWDB per diem requirements and reporting procedures. Was that you, Veronica?
Yes, that'll be myself.
All
And
right.
John, are you going to pull up the PowerPoint?
Yes, I will.
Okay, thank you.
And this is another one of those beginning of the fiscal year. We just need to remind our board members about per diem rules and get you guys covered.
Do those per diem rules apply to meetings that don't have quorum?
Yes, unfortunately they do.
No, good. So,
Give me a second, please.
Okay, and then will you put it in slideshow view, John?
Trying to figure out how to get there.
Right up there at the top line up here. It says slideshow. Thank you. Okay, good morning, everybody. So I'm just going to go over the per diem for you all. So if you this is something you do want to take part in, then we can work together in making sure you're compensated for attending the meetings. If you choose to want that option, you can move to the next slide, John. So what is per diem? Per diem is for state board commissioners, with the exception of cabinet secretaries, deputy secretaries, and state employees, who can claim per diem for attending a virtual or in-person meeting. Next slide, John. So the rates for attending the meetings: for an in-person meeting, which is 4 hours or longer, you would get $95. In-person meeting for less than 4 hours, it would be $45. And then virtual meeting for any length is $45. You can go to the next screen. So if you choose that you do want to receive per diem for attending the state board meetings, the first step we would need to do is have you become a vendor in our share system, so we could pay you that per diem as a reimbursement. Some of you did have claimed per diem in the past. Unfortunately, it has been a significant amount of time since that probably has happened. So we would have to get you reactivated as a vendor in share. So you would have to refill this form out as well, even if you have received per diem in the past. Okay, John, next slide. So after we would get you in as a vendor and share, every meeting that you attend, you will be sent this form that you will have to fill out. I will have it filled out for you. All you'll have to do is sign and date and send back to me. So if we are doing virtual, I'll email it to you. It does have to be an original signature or a certified Adobe signature for it to be accepted by our Department of Finance. So if I can assist you on both of those options if needed. If we're in person, then I'll have these ready for at the meeting. And you can just sign at the meeting, and then I'll continue on with the reimbursement process. Next slide, John. So after all of the paperwork is received, if you're receiving per diem, everything will be submitted to our accounts payable department to start the reimbursement process. Once the reimbursement is processed, payment will either be direct deposited into your bank account, if that's the option that you chose on the W-9, or a check will be mailed to your address provided on your W-9. Next slide, John. And if you have any questions, this is my email address. You can email me. If you want to take part in per diem, you can send a chat right now and let me know. I'll be reaching out to everybody via email, and you can give me your answer that way as well. And then I will not be a part of the next meeting, as I will be on maternity leave. So whomever will be taking my place during my maternity leave will be the one who will process any reimbursements at that time.
But what would be really helpful, and I think what Veronica is covered here, is that if you're planning to do that, let's get the process started so that we have the paperwork in place. And then once it's set up, we have your W-9 and you're in the system. It's a fairly simple, seamless process after that, because
Yes.
a form will basically just be sent to you to say, please sign, send us this, so that we can process your payment for participating in the board.
And this will start next meeting. So I'll get everything, anyone who wants to be reimbursed, I'll do the process prior to going on maternity leave. And then next meeting, which I believe, John, is in December, am I correct?
October.
October, sorry. So actually I'll be at the next meeting. It'll be the following meeting. So by October, I will be able to start the reimbursement process for everybody. So the per diem will start next meeting.
All right. Thank you, Veronica. Any questions for Veronica? I am not seeing any. I just had a quick one. There's a 4-hour meeting limit that we had to meet for the $95 in person. Does that include driving time, or do we have to have a 4-hour meeting?
It would have to be a 4-hour meeting. So driving time, yeah, unfortunately does not count. Now for those who, if we do in-person meetings, and are driving from outside of Albuquerque, there is the option to do a mileage reimbursement. We could look at that depending on the amount of travel. We could see about mileage reimbursement.
Understood. Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
Oh, and congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
All right, moving on to the next item was discuss and vote or discuss on preferred method of our meetings. Really what I wanted to get a sense of where we're adding the ability to continue virtual meetings into our bylaws. It's already in our Open Meetings Act. And then there's some language in there discussing what happens after a state of emergency is over. But I wanted to get a feel from the board. Do we want to keep meeting virtually? Do we like this format? Do we want to meet in person? Do we want to switch between each one, or maybe have one in-person meeting a year and do virtual? I just kind of wanted to get a feel from everybody else what you would like. Kelly.
Is a hybrid format worth discussing? We do that within our own board, but I don't know if that's you have to do it right, you know, if you're going to do hybrid. So I don't know if that's on the table.
So I will say that we're not quite finished with our remodel in the building. So the structure is completely done. Love to have you guys come and see it, because you guys will not believe it. For those who had been in our building before, and if you came now, you'd feel like, where am I? It looks really different. So we will have the ability to do some hybrid things, but we're still completing the AV side of things. We have been conducting some hybrid training, for example, where we do have a big screen and we have people in the room. So we have the capability of doing it to some degree. It's not at the level that I would love to see it at just yet, because we haven't quite finalized all of our equipment, but we're going to get to that point, and we certainly would have the ability to do a hybrid option.
And I guess I should have clarified. When I say in person, I do think hybrid. I think this is the way things are now. And I think having this available is not only beneficial for board members, but also for just the public to view what's going on and you know, perhaps participate too. So it as a chair, that's how I would envision, yes, them being hybrid, assuming we can do that.
Yeah, and that's a really good point, Chair, because like right now we have 37 people watching us.
And for as big as of the state we want to provide that access to everybody. Commissioner, I think you had your hand up next.
Well, I think it's pretty important that we have at least the electronic version for these meetings. I don't know about all the other board members, but I'm on 2 or 3 boards, plus being the county commissioner, plus being on city boards, different things, and I get covered up. And you know, it's not that I've been, you know, when you've been married 47 years, she really doesn't care if you're at home or not. But still, it's just so much better for me to be able to do these Zoom meetings.
Thank you. Amber?
Yeah, I think I'll just echo what you said, Chairman, and but I also want to, and the Commissioner, but I also just want to add that I think it would be great, even if we continue with fully remote meetings, to have maybe at least once a year, or maybe even once every 6 months, to have an in-person meeting, or the option of an in-person meeting, just because I think getting to know each other, you know, is important, and that being face-to-face really facilitates that. And I think that that would be good for the, you know, if the public can come. I'm new to the board, so I don't know if the public comes to the in-person meetings when we have them, but I think that would also be good, and a good option for the public as well, while keeping in mind, of course, we're still in a pandemic, and when hybrid is available, I think that should be something that's standard.
Thank you, Amber. Greg.
Great. Chairman, thank you very much. I definitely love the ability to meet remotely. I think it does absolutely open up participation to the public and makes things a lot easier. I do hope that we will see the Open Meetings Act amended to more explicitly allow that and to expand the kinds of circumstances when that's available. Right now, the language says that it has to be difficult or impossible for the member to attend. Obviously, the pandemic has created that difficult or impossible situation. So hopefully, we'll see the Open Meetings Act amended to more explicitly allow for virtual attendance, hybrid meetings during more regular times.
Thank you, Greg. Any other comments on this item?
I want to add that one of the thoughts that I had in terms of an in-person, we're, with the pandemic, we definitely scaled back, but we are planning to go back into a statewide workforce conference because we know that the front line really benefits from that in terms of also being able to network, come together, learn best practices and pieces that would be beneficial for them. And that would be a time that I would like to see or tie in a board meeting as well, so that the board members could, one, attend the conference, but also come and convene together around some items that we might have around workforce. So we're working on that. We're almost there.
Thanks, Yolanda. Any final comments on this? All right, I'm not seeing any. I will move on to the next item. Now we are going into local board presentations. And we have Beth Elias with us today. On the agenda also includes the central board, Art Martinez, but they had an illness, so they were unable to produce the presentation. And since we had already sent out the agenda, we kind of have to stick to that. So we will not be hearing from Art, but Beth has sent in a presentation. So Beth, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair Roscoe. Good morning, board members. We were sent a series of questions for submission to you as presentation materials. I just want to preface this presentation with, it's impossible to go completely into all of the lessons learned during and after COVID. It is an ever evolving, ever moving, ever learning environment. So with that, I will get started in trying to answer what I thought you were asking of us. Okay, John, next slide. And I'm going to keep my camera off because I keep getting, there's a lot of construction going on around me and I'm getting pop-up notices that my internet connection is unstable. So I am going to hope that leaving my video off will help with that. So we were asked to dig into lessons learned during COVID and post-COVID. For a long time, it had been on the radar of all of the local boards that New Mexico's digital literacy levels were far behind the national average. And what became apparent when we had to start closing offices in response to the pandemic was that many of the individuals in the communities that we served did not even have the capacity to go in and file an unemployment claim by themselves online because they just couldn't navigate it. We did know that many of the people that were coming into our offices were still using flip phones and had no interest in even going to a smartphone type technology. We also knew that we had to change how we were working to assist those individuals in response to that. And also that being able to leverage the skills across the partners. I know that one of the things that is incumbent in WIOA is the leveraging of partnerships across the system to better serve the customers, but also leveraging those skills. At least within the East, many of the things that Voc Rehab was already good at, we were able to pull people together and get trained in how we can do this with our customers. The same thing with adult education. We were able to pull adult education in because of our rurality, we had been using Zoom for several years. So we were able to do some training with the external partners on some different tips and techniques to be able to provide virtual testing and proctoring and so forth. So we learned those things during COVID, and then post-COVID, I didn't actually put it on here because I could not figure out how to put it in a couple of sentences. One of the biggest things for me and what we've seen in our board is that the environment of the workforce is changing faster than the workforce system is currently prepared to respond to. When you go to several of the restaurants and in response to low staffing, you put in your order via an app you access through a QR code, and then someone brings your food out and you pay that way so that they can get by with less staff. This is creating a trickle effect on different types of jobs that are needed. And one of the biggest lessons that I think the workforce development system as a whole has got to learn is how to respond more quickly to those private sector needs and do a better job of predicting what may not be in demand today, but is going to be in demand tomorrow because of all of these driving needs within the private sector. There are several employers that were fully staffed at the I'm going to call it the end of the pandemic, but when businesses were allowed to fully reopen, that because of their employees becoming accustomed to working remotely and so forth, many of them are losing employees due to people pursuing remote work or hybrid work options. So in helping our employers adapt to a post-COVID labor market, I think it is incumbent upon us as professionals to investigate how we can help those employers identify where they can and how they can still create the internal accountability for their productivity of their employees. I'm not saying we are anywhere near there, but it's just, to me, that is one of the big post-COVID lessons, that if we're going to remain relevant as a workforce system, we're going to have to learn to do some of those things. Okay, next slide. The plans for the upcoming year. Again, this was one that was a shortened list. We have a lot of things that are in the hopper. We're continuing to expand co-enrollment across the partners, and not just co-enrolling them within the programs, but co-case management. It's been very important to us that as we push co-enrollment forward, that we are also leveraging case management capability across the partners. We are working to get out, the AE and operator staff are working to get out into the offices to do some focus groups to have employers for the business services, and then job seekers for the career services, to redesign that in a way that makes more sense to the users of the system, not that makes sense to us. We attended the NOB conference in DC this year, and the Spokane Workforce Development Center manager was there. And that was one of the things that they did. They started small and started using those focus groups to redesign and rethink how they did business. They tripled their customer flow in a matter of 2 years. That's huge. That is huge. And the customer satisfaction as well. So that is something that we want to get started on as this year rolls out. We want to work with the private sector to increase the number and quality and coordination of services being provided to employers. We know that, excuse me, we know that engaging with private sector, a lot of times they tell us, yeah, we don't really want to work with your program because I don't want calls from 18 different people. So part of that increasing and improving the private sector services includes aligning the business services that are provided across the partners so that those business services representatives are cross-trained in the availability of services and application requirements for those services across the programs, so that this person becomes the subject matter expert in, say, all things hotel, motel, and they can represent the entire system, and they can pull from the entire system to help place and recruit individuals. We want to look at establishing some norms, some baseline minimum qualifications for who gets to go out and speak to those employers on behalf of the workforce system, and then make sure that we have training to support that. We want to increase partner access within the WICOS system so that they can, see what services are being provided to the individuals that are co-enrolled in their programs as well. And if we're going to build a quality workforce system, one of the things that has to happen is we've got to decrease the turnover. The person that walks through the door that's been working with Jane needs to come in and see Jane. The person that has, the HR person that has been working with this individual to make them an expert in that employee's needs, we just can't afford to lose that talent if we're going to be truly providing quality services to those individuals in our communities. Next slide. Business and community plans. The area is targeting businesses and industries that are our largest employers. The eastern area is 12 counties and a population of just a little over 315,000. We have one county that has 0.5 persons per square mile. So what represents business in the rural communities is not always going to align with what you see in your metropolitan areas. Law enforcement is a target for us, municipalities, obviously healthcare, in alignment with the governor's, vision and hospitality and tourism. We are working with those industries to try and help increase their hiring and to respond to their needs. Healthcare has, for the last 20 years, been a priority in the East, as well as energy, since this is part of the Permian Basin, and that activity within that industry drives the economy of half of the region. So that has always been a focus, not just oil and gas, but wind and solar as well. And we are expanding through different community projects and different online and virtual training opportunities, participant access to telework opportunities. In many cases, the rural areas of New Mexico are losing their population to the more metropolitan areas for bigger opportunities. If we can create a network of telework opportunities and develop the skills that are required to support that, then we can keep our population and maintain the health of our communities. Next slide, please. The targeting strategies for the specific industries, it's really about meeting with those employers and those industries and working with them to create the alignment of, as I mentioned before, the partner services to meet the needs. For example, we have worked, well, not myself personally, but we have apprenticeship staff at both DWS and in our one-stop system that have been working together to align apprenticeship opportunities with Title I services and business services within the workforce system in the East. That type of an alignment is something that needs to happen across the various partners as we work within those communities to prioritize which industries in that community are in the most need right now. And then we're not going to, there's so much need that there is no way we can meet all of the need for everyone every day. So we're going to have to be strategic in leveraging manpower to hit the biggest needles first and then work backwards from there. We're increasing the number of both in-person and virtual meetings that we're having with private sector and board partners, and working to, our operator is actually in the planning processes for the employer summit that we were supposed to hold. I think it was about 21 days before everything went into lockdown. So we're finally at the point where we're going to have that employer summit, and we are working with private sector to determine what it is they want to have available to them at that summit. Next slide, please. We've actually been working to increase employer engagement. We have, in the past year, we have seated 7 new private sector members, which has really done a lot to help increase the private sector engagement. We have also increased the access to committee membership, that they can be, you know, people that represent private sector on the committees can be voting members on the committees, but not be part of the board. So their voice is heard and it is utilized, but it doesn't impact our quorum requirements. I'm sorry, that's just one of the things that you have to deal with. But it does, you know, we can engage them at that level, and they have a voice in policy development and prioritization without having an impact on our board requirement. And then also inviting employers to participate in the partner meetings as those partner meetings continue and evolve, then having the private sector engaged in those so that those partners are there listening to what that local community private sector needs. We also are looking to engage more with some of the employer associations rather than the individual employers, such as the Chambers of Commerce and then the New Mexico Oil and Gas Association. So by engaging more with them, we can get a broader touch per each individual meeting. Next slide. We were asked about increasing participant numbers. The DWS holds a biweekly WIOA meeting, and I think it would be safe to say that everybody knows that's been a focus of the East for the last several years. We have increased, it's something that we are very proud of. We had increased in PY20, we increased 23% over PY19 and 35.8% in PY21 over PY20. And those are numbers as a whole. It fluctuated a little bit between adult and dislocated worker and youth, but you know, the overall number was a 35.8% increase. That's pretty significant, in my opinion anyway. And we've worked towards creating the infrastructure to support continued growth. And it will be accomplished through, again, increased collaboration with the partner programs. We have been very intentional in our targeting efforts and outreach materials that have been sent out. We are, as I mentioned before, working heavily to get focus groups put together in each of the offices to work to improve the services into something that makes sense for the people that we serve. We want to streamline the customer flow so that we really want to dig into examining if this is what the process is, are we doing this because this is the way it should be? Are we doing this to meet a requirement, or are we doing this because this is how we've always done it and we don't even know why we're doing it that way anymore? So that we're not creating extra work where it's not needed. We want to expand the use of group services where it makes sense and where our customers say that that would work for them. so that we can serve more people in a smaller amount of time with higher efficient utilization of staff man hours. Next slide, please. This is what we are projecting for numbers for next year, which in most cases represents a minimum of a 20% increase. I feel like we, in some of these areas, will meet these pretty much spot on, and I really feel like in some of these it's going to be a pretty conservative number. So next slide. Our local plan modification, we are in the process. We've been meeting and collaborating with local partners and updating the information for those portions of the plan. We've been reviewing all of the changes in the labor market information that have come about, and then to the extent possible with the predictions for demand occupations and so forth, to the best that can be done. I mean, some of that is just an impossibility. I mean, when you look at ONET projections, there's nowhere on there that you will ever see anything that says influencer, but yet that has become a huge employment opportunity for a lot of the younger, well, and some older ones too. I mean, there are a lot of people making a pretty decent living with a kitchen cooking blog, and I just don't think there's any way to predict that from our place. So we will respond as the best that we can to what we see happening. Next slide. Post-COVID strategies for job seekers, again, primarily focuses on us rethinking how we're doing business. Why are we doing things this way? Is this something that makes sense? How can we work together to better align that, minimize duplication, and make it more available to all of the customers of the system? For example, if we are doing a workshop on social media networking, for example, and how that can impact your job search, how can we make that available to the customers of vocational rehabilitation? How can we align that so that the adult education students can participate in that and understand it, so that they're all getting the benefit? We're increasing the value of what's available for services within the workforce system. We are also looking at ways to engage individuals that have lost their job quicker. We work with the state intensively on a program that is called RESA, and it's reemployment services. Basically, those that have been identified as most likely to exhaust unemployment benefits are targeted and brought into the offices. And that usually happens at about, I believe, about the 5-week mark, 5 to 6 weeks, because, you know, by the time the letters are sent out, then they're scheduled for 3 weeks after that. But we have access to the new claims each week. So now we're looking at how can we engage them right out of the gate as soon as their claim is filed, and try and get them in for some kind of services and get them engaged. Because the one thing that we have seen, I don't have any reason or rationale for why, but it has become very evident that the longer we wait to engage with them, the less likely they are to engage in some type of skill building activity. So we do want to work to make that happen sooner. And we will be looking at additional ways to do that, and then tracking, finding ways to track the impact. And then again, with employers, it's really all about alignment so that we can expand and improve what we're all doing. We have found through the last year, and thank you to Voc Rehab, because they have a lot of trainings available for employers on how to work with individuals with disabilities. And then different, just a variety of different training opportunities that are available through the partners that we've engaged in the last year or two, and have provided that also for our board members, so that as policy and strategies are developed, we're better informed on the ripple effect and the overall impact that this can have throughout the partners, and how we all serve employers. Also, upskilling is something that is very near and dear to my heart. We see a lot of individuals that are not really interested in long-term training. And as a matter of fact, and this has been pre-COVID, during COVID, and what I've seen in the LMI data post-COVID has been that the prediction for growth in jobs that require bachelor's degrees actually show negative growth. So many of the job seekers in the Eastern region are not interested in a degree. So if they're going to remain competitive, then can we take some of the trainings that have been traditionally offered, like a Microsoft Office certification? This is one of the ones that we targeted. That is typically a fairly long and intensive training if you do it through a degree process, but it can be broken down into micro components. And a lot of times people are more willing to engage in a 2 to 3 week, couple of hours a week workshop to improve their Excel skills, to improve their Microsoft Word. And so we're really focusing on trying to break some of those trainings down into smaller pieces where hopefully we can get more buy-in from the labor market to have them engage. Okay, next slide. As I mentioned earlier, for enhancing the service delivery, we are investing heavily in what they call human-centered design, and that is those focus groups that engage the consumers in the process of designing those services. We did that recently with in June, the area held a youth summit for participants within the youth program, and the service provider pulled together a group of the youth, and they came up with the logo for the conference, the theme. They worked on identifying who their speakers and trainers and all of that would be, and the focus was career exploration and work readiness. We had a social media influencer there telling how you get into this, and also getting into what it takes to do the work ethic piece of it, because it's not as easy as it looks when you just view their channel on YouTube. We had post-secondary, we had adult education, we had military people, and the difference in the way the youth approached that and who they wanted to hear from was they did not want to hear from military recruiters. They wanted to hear from people in the military, so they got the bird's eye view of the day in the life. We did the same thing with law enforcement, and it was really a huge success. And the feedback from the youth that participated, and we had 104, I believe, over the course of the 3 days. It was a half day on Wednesday, a full day on Thursday, and a half day on Friday. And some had to be at work, so they couldn't attend all 3 days. But we had 104 unique individuals, and it was a huge success. And I really attribute a lot of that success and the feedback that we got from the attendees through to having had the youth engaged in the process of designing and building that conference. So we want to take that and expand on it. And that's the biggest thing I can say about where we're trying to move the East over the next year and changing service delivery. Sorry, next slide. regional changes. It's this was the easiest little graph I could pull from some of the stuff that we've been pulling together for the local plan updates. Wages are going down in the East, which is very interesting to me because I've been with the Eastern Board for 22 years now. I've never seen that happen in the East. I would attribute a lot of that to the changes in things that are happening within the oil and gas industry in the region. Because a lot of the oil and gas industry has been significantly responsible for driving wages up in the region for employers to compete. So don't know exactly why that's happening, but that is the suspicion. There are oil and gas still remains a demand industry, but the number of individuals that are employed in it has decreased by almost 5,000. It's still showing the highest growth. And as the numbers here indicate, the number of employers increased in PY18 and in PY20, but we're seeing a decline since about June of 21 in the number of employers. Unfortunately, when you're looking at a lot of this labor market information, a lot of the data is based on UI wage filings by employers, and that data is pretty old by the time you actually have access to it. So having what it looks like today is not always it's not always available. So next slide. Yes, we are continuing to target healthcare, education, and IT. It was questioned when we submitted our local plan before why we were targeting IT, because it was not listed in the needs assessments that were conducted statewide within the communities. But when you drill down into it, a lot of the companies that were using IT services were outsourcing those services to employers in Albuquerque and such. And as I mentioned, we've had population declines over the last 10 years that in some of those communities have been pretty significant. So we focused on IT as a way to create telework opportunities. And we were focusing on this pre-COVID, and now it is really starting to show up. The number of IT jobs posted in the region have increased by about 300%. So we're also seeing quite a few changes in the entrepreneurial activities within the region. And it's largely through the establishment of these small companies that are doing web design, that are doing cybersecurity, that are doing computer networking or such in the region, where they're no longer being outsourced to companies in Albuquerque. Next slide, please. The area, as I mentioned earlier, the need is greater than what I've seen it in my entire engagement with the board. The need is greater and our resources are diminishing. The workforce system is competing just the way the private sector is for employees. So as I hit earlier, we have to be very intentional. And as the board leads and drives that system, we've got to be very strategic in the thinking and how we align that to make it work for all of the partners. We can't move the needle for one without thinking about what the impact is going to be for not only the end user, but also on the partner programs and how they deliver services. So all of that has to be done very intentionally, very strategically. And we just have to be very conscious that we need to be working smarter, because we cannot decrease the turnover if we're just constantly asking them to work harder. So, and I'm sorry, I mean, I figure I put the information on the slides. You guys can read it. I really figured you probably wanted to hear more from me, what went into the thought processes behind the slides. So, okay, next slide. For support, what would be the most helpful is if there was some targeting of looking for training opportunities that would help align local boards with the vision of the state board and where the state is going, and looking to find innovative approaches to it. What are other states doing to resolve this problem that we're seeing in New Mexico? And how can you align that vision across all of your partners at the state level? If you can align that vision across the public sector bodies on this board with the private sector, that makes the job of the local boards trying to accomplish that 10 times easier, 10 times smoother. There needs to be a unified vision and for where the system is going. And then as I hit on, finding the best practices. How do we solve these problems, and engaging the local boards with the state board in identifying how can we solve this problem. I mean, at one point, it's been many years, but there used to be biannual meetings of some of the state board members with local board members to look at some of the problems that were coming to the forefront at the state board to be discussed and look for problem solving, and then ideas and ways to tackle it. I would just like to see better alignment between the state board and local boards, as well as across the partners. Next slide. I think that was it. So with that, I'll stand for any questions there might be.
Thank you, Beth. Great presentation and great insight into what's going on in your part of the state. Are there any questions or comments from the board members? Okay, I'm not seeing or hearing any. I do have some comments and I guess some questions too. I guess my first question is, how much collaboration is there between the different local boards? Like, do you guys get together, or at least the administrative entities, and discuss like what you guys are doing?
We are doing a little better with that now, at least us in the central. I speak with Art and them probably at least once every couple of weeks. But one thing that we used to do was there was a quarterly meeting between someone from the state board, the SAE, and then the local boards. And it was helpful because one of the things that I mean, it's not my problem, it's yours, but what I would see that could cause you some challenges is all the boards have to do things in a manner that makes sense for their region, but they all need to be moving in the same direction towards the same goals. And if they're not, then that's going to cause this board and the SAE significant challenges from the oversight standpoint. You know, then it becomes kind of like herding cats, so to speak. So yeah, I personally think that would be something that would be very beneficial to reinstitute.
Do you know if that was something that just fell to the wayside because of COVID, or just?
I think it fell to the wayside due to personnel changes.
Okay, gotcha. And I'm some of my questions are I'm also a member of the Southwest Local Board, so sometimes I'm putting that hat on and wearing also the state workforce board. It seems to me that especially with the work you're doing with the focus groups, like that really should be very collaborative. And I wonder.
Honestly, one of the things I would love to see happen, I would love to see somebody from this state board I would love to see a group of us go together to Spokane to see that center and talk to those people. At NOB, she actually said she'll do a 1-hour consult with you for free. I just think if we're going to be relevant and be viewed as a resource to the private sector, then they've got to stop viewing us as a government entity. And that's one of the things that workforce center has done so well, is they know that there's a bunch of government agencies under that roof, but they are not viewed as an arm of that. They are viewed as a resource to that community. It's really phenomenal what they have done.
I would be totally on board with something like that. And I'm wondering what, it seems obvious that the state has a role to play in kind of coordinating something like that, because all the different boards need to do the same thing, you know? So I think the lessons learned from that process could benefit all the boards. So, you know, I don't know. I don't know that I can give homework to Yolanda and John, but I think we need to find areas where, and I'm sure you guys are already doing it, but where the state on some of these items is kind of where the action is being led from to inform the other boards. Because I think you mentioned it, Beth, you know, in some areas, really the local boards are more responsible or are more better suited to guiding what's happening in their local regions. But some of these things I think could be done at the state level, and that would provide a lot more value from the state to the local boards. So that's something I'm very interested in. The other thing you mentioned, and I guess this is going back to the state, how we can play a role for some trainings for like Microsoft Office and Excel. What I'm assuming, is it like some kind of an online training program that you guys use?
No, we actually worked with the community colleges to have them break those programs down and offer them through the continuing ed side of the house. They are not credit bearing programs, but they get a certificate and a micro badge. And it was what we thought would be an opportunity for people to, you know, increase their digital literacy, to increase. I mean, I know, and my staff, if they were visible on this screen, would be shaking their head. One of the things that we have to have to survive is pretty solid Excel skills. And so we've done some pretty significant one-on-one training with staff to build those skills, as well as looking at things like LinkedIn Learning and stuff like that. So I figured if as an employer I needed it, then probably a lot of those private sector people did too. And so we just worked with trying to, okay, you don't necessarily need someone that can write macros, but you need someone that can write a decent formula or take a formula that's not calculating correctly and figure out why. So to break those down into those smaller components that require less of a commitment on the part of the job seeker is what we were working to do.
Gotcha.
So that it was much more targeted and people could engage in the pieces that they wanted. Another one we haven't seen a lot of buy-in on, but as was mentioned in this meeting earlier, the virtual meetings and so forth, I don't think that's a horse that's ever going to go back in the barn. And so one of the things we were working with the colleges to kind of get put together that would help employers was, what are some of the virtual meeting platforms that are used, and what are some of the strengths of each, and then some of the, how do you use a breakout room in Zoom versus Teams? What does that look like? Or WebEx, or what are some of the different options available within those different platforms, and which one is the most used? So.
Gotcha. I don't know if Yolanda had a comment in response to my questions.
Oh, no, I was just going to say that, just thank you, Beth. I know that one of the things that we have kept in place for years now, it's been a while, is that we do have meetings that go every other week with the local boards where we do get them together And the purpose of that was so that we could collaborate and one, talk about WIOA implementation, but also problem solve and some other ways. I think we could easily, you know, listening to Beth, I would love to meet with you, Beth, to see how those meetings could become a little bit more of what you're saying in terms of like a quarterly meeting. We certainly could add a state board representative on that. I know we have local, it's mostly staff, but we could add the board chairs to that at least maybe once a month or something, or once a quarter. I mean, I think it would be fairly simple to do. But I think before we go there, we'd have to probably have a meeting with just the administrator so that we could talk and plan about what, you know, what we could do there. But I think we have lots of ample opportunity.
Great. Kelly?
One question, and I do apologize if this has ever been brought up. So, you know, I joined this this wonderful board in February. So this is, I think, my 4th meeting. Has there ever been, given Beth's comment with regards to some of the breakdown and disconnect in communication, has there ever been like a living document, some sort of systems mapping that identifies where there's synergy or opportunities amongst the local boards or even with the state board? And then to piggyback off that question, and this is, I apologize if this has been brought up previously, but I am working off of a WIOA state plan that was from 2019. And one of my questions was, how often does this get updated? And if systems mapping is something that the local workforce boards or the state workforce board would find valuable, is that something we can maybe incorporate into the next rendition?
I think that's a great idea, Kelly. Absolutely. We could. So the plan that you're working off is our current 4-year plan, and it is, we're getting ready, fixing to do another one. John and I were just talking about that. So we'll be kicking that off here pretty soon where we get to review that. We're going to be meeting with the plan partners this coming Friday so that we can start to talk about that. And it's through that we probably need some growth in that area. We set out a vision with some goals, some specific goals and activities. And what we do is we report to those in terms of where we are in process. And so the local boards will provide an annual report to us that would look against their goals and visions that they set, or the metrics that they set for themselves, against how did that align with the state plan, and where are we, where were some of the areas where we had accomplishment and places where we didn't. So we just went through a modification with USDOL. Amber's on here, she knows it was a little bit painful because they did go through our plan with like a fine-tooth comb, making sure that we were specific on that. I would love to see, and maybe as we get to do in the state plan, we are going to have a contractor with us. I think it's the best way for us to go to help us organize our thinking on that, because it has community input, has to work with partners, and it also we're informing the local plans or giving them some information to guide them as Beth is talking. You know, what's the direction that we expect for the local boards to go? It's the state plan drives that. So I think it would be, we certainly could do some systems mapping, I think, as part of our next iteration for sure.
All right. Any other questions or comments from the board? All right. I'm not seeing any. I guess I would add, Beth, you mentioned going to Spokane. Another very strong board is the El Paso Borderplex workforce region. There's an opportunity there too. I've spoken with Gloria Juarez, the Southwest's administrative entity, about just talking and seeing, you know, what can we learn from them. That might be something for us to do. So anyways, thank you so much, Beth. Really appreciated the effort you put into this and the time today. It was a great presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Beth.
All right, well, let me find my agenda. Okay, so that's the end of local board presentations. Let's move on to chair and board comments. Are there any comments from board members?
Any updates anybody needs to share? I will just have just a quick update. Probably saw it in the news. The governor did announce a law enforcement training assistance fund. Those funds are going to be WIOA funds that are supporting that. So we're going to be working with local municipalities to identify some trainees that we could have and support them with those funds. The goal here is to support smaller communities where law enforcement tends to get poached. They get trained and then they end up going to other communities. So we're just in the process of getting it organized and finalized. So that's one. And then in today's paper, there was a really nice announcement. I think this is a really good one for New Mexico, but it's the $6.4 million grant for job development benefits rural New Mexico. And this was up in the northern area. So one of the good jobs grants was awarded up in the northern area. So we're really excited about that coming to New Mexico. We also have another grant that was awarded to us. I don't know if I don't think I announced it in the last meeting. Maybe I did. It's a Navigator Grant. We were one of 7 states that received that. It's going to be executed out of our office at the state level. And this is for outreach so that we're supporting individuals predominantly in our rural areas and communities where they don't have ready access or easy access to understanding the workforce system and our tools. We're going to be working with predominantly with the Department of Health and Indian Affairs on this, working with the community health workers who can provide some really solid, good information in the communities around how to access unemployment for one, but also how to access the workforce system. We also have another grant that we're in process of already executing, and that's the one where we're kind of shifting our model a bit. We're training folks to actually be in the offices in our connection centers to provide meaningful access to individuals with unemployment. The goal there is, as we're helping individuals, we're catching them right away and really working on that transition planning into employment. So we kicked off that. We've had some training and we're demonstrating that. It's a pilot demonstration right now in a few of our offices. So there's a lot of good things that are coming about, and we're really excited about the work that's ahead of us. And so those are just the announcements that I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Yolanda. Kelly, I think you had your hand up next.
Thanks, Chairman. And just to piggyback off Yolanda, that EDA awarded grant for the Northern Central New Mexico Economic Development District. That's a pretty, I mean, out of 509 applicants to be selected of 30, one of 32, I think is pretty huge. I have been kind of intimately involved in that group and part of their systems mapping process. So if we ever from them, Chairman, Yolanda, let me know and happy to help coordinate that if anybody's interested.
Thank you. Amber.
Yeah, in light of the Secretary Serna's departure, and I think that a recent meeting for it was recently postponed. I was just curious, where are we on the decision-making regarding the Be Pro, Be Proud initiative, just out of curiosity?
Thank you. So one of the other things that we were awarded during this last legislative session was that $10 million, which is focused on youth workforce development and also on the case management and adult services. So we have had one task force meeting. We postponed one. So we are on the hook right now. We're waiting for Secretary Nair to come in so that we could engage her in the planning process. But the Be Proud, Be Pro is still in that mix. So we're just trying to finalize the mechanism of how that's going to occur. Like, it's a big purchase. So it's not just the purchase of the simulator itself. It's also making sure that we have a plan, a programmatic plan of how it's going to be utilized, how it's going to be sustained, and what's the vision for getting that out. So we're working on that. That is definitely still in the works, and we're hoping to finalize our plan. I would say we're going to have it finalized probably by the end of September in terms of what that's going to look like, in terms of how that money is going to be utilized and some of the strategies that will be going forward. The good part with the 10 million, it's not just 1 year money. We do have through 2025 to spend it. So we also want to be really thoughtful in what we're putting together, that we're getting the best utilization of those funds. These are, I guess they're ARPA funds. So it's associated with the pandemic and those federal funds for us to do that. So that's the good part. They're not going to revert on us in just 1 year. So we're trying to be really thoughtful about how we're going to utilize those. We do have a community task force that's helping to inform that, and we are going to re-engage them as we go forward on that. The other thing that you probably have heard too is the Energy Transition Act. There was also an award. Those funds were also inclusive of some funding that's going over to economic development, to us, and also to Indian Affairs on some workforce development and pieces to address that northwestern area around the closure of the plant up there. So that is actually coming about really quickly as well. And we're in the process of developing our plan there for that as well. So lots of moving parts with money that has come over to the agency so that we can figure out how we're going to utilize those funds in the best possible ways.
Thanks, Yolanda.
That's an exciting time to be part of workforce, that's for sure. We've got money, and it's not just US DOL funds, which is really nice.
All right, any other comments or questions? I'm not seeing any. So I'll finish up with some thoughts that I have. I'm still trying to figure out my role as chair. Obviously, taking care of the meetings, but how do we, as a state board, one, where do we fit into all of this? And then once we kind of figure that out, how do we decide to move forward that has the most beneficial impact onto the state with workforce? So I want to spend some time thinking about that. And related to that, I'm very happy to hear that the department is looking to bring the state workforce conference back together. I think that's a great way for us to kind of be more comfortable with workforce, having it more present in our minds. I think Beth mentioned this. There's absolutely a disconnect between the local boards and the state board. How do we bridge that gap and get everybody more aligned and moving in unison? I'm wondering if the state board should have some kind of training for us, having some kind of strategic planning meeting. I want to get people together to kind of start thinking about this stuff. I want to find ways to get everybody much more engaged. If people have more buy-in, hopefully they'll attend more meetings, that sort of thing. So that's something I want to look at. I think I don't think I mentioned this, but my day job is doing economic development down in Santa Teresa. And I think one of the biggest hurdles I have seen with getting more businesses and employers involved with the workforce development industry is just it's a behemoth. There's so many different parts to it, so many different groups doing overlapping things, and because everybody wants to do workforce development, it's so key. And I wonder if the state should take the lead in trying to wrap, I don't know, some kind of a branding or how do we make it easy for a business to pick up a phone or email somebody that's going to help them with everything with workforce? And so I think that's something that we need to figure out. I think is the easiest way to make it for businesses to engage our services. That's one of the things that we should be looking at. I also have a question. does the State Workforce Board have funding for sending people to conferences? And the reason I ask that is, so I've been on the local board probably 10 years, and it wasn't until maybe 3-4 years ago that it kind of clicked in my head, and I realized how important this work is. And that's when I really got engaged. And one of the reasons that happened was because I went to the Texas Workforce Conference, and it just blew me away what they're doing. Note, I'm born and raised in New Mexico. Green chili flows through my veins. So, you know, I'll point out when Texas does something right, I'll acknowledge that they do something right. And they're doing workforce very well, and El Paso in particular. So I think if there's a way for us to send state board members to that conference, maybe they'll have the same experience that I did in getting really engaged and seeing what's possible and bring that energy back. So maybe that's something we can look at. I think that's all my notes. If there are no other comments, we've come to the end of our agenda. So any final comments from anybody? Okay, I don't see any. Well, with that, if there are no objections, then this meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate your time and your work on workforce development. So thank you all.
Thank
Have
you.
a good afternoon all.